This episode is sponsored by Horizon Capital, an M&A and micro private equity firm that acquires and grows SaaS companies. Horizon Capital only works with SaaS companies generating between $500K and $5 million in annual recurring revenue, where they help them unlock the true value of their business and scale to the next level. Whether you're ready to move on to your next startup or want to work with the right growth partner, Horizon's team will work with you to find the best structure possible. From M&A strategy to capital investments, SaaS is all they do. Simple as that. If you're a SaaS founder with less than $5 million in annual recurring revenue and are looking to sell your business, visit horizoncapital.com today and get a free valuation. If you'd like to sponsor the SaaS District podcast or recommend any guests that you think would be valuable to be on the show, visit horizoncapital.com/SaaS-podcast today. Thanks again, folks. Hello, everyone. This is your host, Akhil Jabbar, and welcome back to another episode of SaaS District. In today's episode, we'll be talking about expanding your SaaS to international markets, effectively managing remote teams, and going through a major rebranding as a SaaS company. Today, we have our guest, Bryce Davies, joining us. Bryce is a tech founder who's originally from Australia and then moved to the UK in 2017 to expand an Australian workforce management application into the UK market. Bryce is currently the UK General Manager at Tanda, which has now been rebranded as Workforce, an award-winning workforce management software that provides clarity, control, and tools for businesses to get the most from their workforce. Bryce also uses his skills in startups, sales, and marketing to help businesses scale their sales and marketing teams and using scraping technology to automate their revenue growth. So welcome, Bryce. Super excited to have you on the Super SaaS District show today.
Hey, Akhil. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no worries. So for those who don't know, about your background and about Workforce, can you just share what's your personal background? What's the story behind deciding to join Workforce in 2016? I think you started off in the customer success role and then obviously moving up your way up to the general manager role.
Yeah, definitely. So I've probably had a bit of a sort of sideways path into software, although I think most of us do. My studies were primarily in electronic engineering, so I was very much on the hardware side and spent a bit of time in robotics labs and a few other things throughout university as I just got out of it. And I kind of had this thought that was really kind of sitting with me for a long time that I'd just be stuck in a basement soldering, components onto PCBs and things like that. So I finally, gave myself permission to stop being an engineer, and I knew that I wanted to work for a startup. So I stumbled into a local tech startup in Brisbane, Australia, called Tanda. And one of the things I really, really liked about it was, not being a web developer, but still being somewhat technical. I was able to sort of come in and work with our customers in the customer success team, doing a lot of implementation work, which was really fun, and troubleshooting for our customers. And that was just a really awesome opportunity for me to use sort of my problem solving skills, but also be interacting with customers, which is something that was really important to me at the time.
Nice. And then, so just to clarify, when you joined in 2016, what stage were they at? How big were they? Do you remember? Were they still kind of early stage startup, or were they already quite big?
Yeah. So when I joined, I think it was about 4 of us started on the same day, and I think there was about 12 of us all up. So very much, they've been grinding away for a couple of years. Entirely bootstrapped business. Really just a big success story from our hometown. And I think at that time that was when they kind of they knew they were onto a good thing and were trying to accelerate in terms of employee growth. And over the next, I think 18 months, we grew to about 100 heads or a bit more. So.
Wow.
It was really, I think that, that couple of years past there that, we really kind of had, I think, what looks, to a lot of people, that classic startup story, you come in and it's 10 or so people in a small room, and, you look back a year or two and then it's, crazy year-on-year growth, but all good fun.
Nice. So 12 then, what are you guys at now? Just quick headcount numbers, entire team?
Touch over 100, I'd say, about 120 heads.
120, nice. So 10x there. Very cool. So obviously, big question here: workforce, COVID, 2020. A lot has been going on with people moving remotely. Can you share any trends you've seen and biggest challenges you've seen with companies with their workforce management moving completely remotely or mostly remotely this year?
Yeah, I think a lot of people intuitively know what a lot of these are. I mean, we've seen a lot of talk about work from home, or that kind of dynamic. A lot of businesses that we work in are they might have a contingent workforce, so people are paid by the hour or by the shift, and a lot of these employees are people that work on the front line. They're carers, they're the hospitality workers. They're working in hotels, making sure that hotel rooms get cleaned. So one of the interesting things for us, I think, is everyone has this idea. Well, everyone's working from home. Well, there's a lot of the world that's not working from home. They're still more or less on the front line, doing a lot of the jobs that we don't have to do because we're working from our living rooms. But I mean, continually the big trend is keeping employees engaged, making sure that everyone's on the same line and pulling along for the same mission. I think that's one of the big things that we've seen work from home has really disrupted this ability that businesses have to keep everyone aligned. And I think what we're realizing now is just how much those sort of face-to-face interactions, or you bump into someone in the corridor, how much that actually contributes to culture and information sharing.
Yeah.
So we're really helping a lot of our clients balance this idea between you've got people who have to work and there's people who can work from home, and how do we make them all feel like they're pulling in the same direction, they're on the same team. And it's really hard. It's really hard.
It is a challenge, yeah. I've been working remotely for almost 5 years now or more. And yeah, I still miss, the in-person, we have an office here, and, having that interaction, I think you move a lot quicker. And if it's completely remote, I think once you have a repeatable process and you know how to do it, then it's easier to manage remotely. But when you're trying to build things, I think it could be a challenge, right?
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is this is just like this big social experiment that we've just kind of unleashed on everyone all at once. You've taken people that they have everything that you've just described, but set up in the other way, where they've got all of their processes that actually rely on having face-to-face interaction and being able to pick up little social cues from someone, for instance, by the way that they hold themselves when they come into the office. Well, now all of that is being communicated via a chat screen, or at best a video call like this. And it's going to take a long time for people to adjust, I think.
Absolutely. So I think what's interesting is you guys started off in Australia, and then you decided in 2017 to expand to the UK and US. So, from a SaaS perspective, I think generally, people, don't find that to be as challenging, but I do understand there's a lot of challenges behind it. But maybe you can speak more to it. What were these challenges that you saw when you helped, with that expansion to the other markets?
Yeah, there's lots of challenges. But I think the first thing to keep in mind, I think obviously we're a bootstrap company, so for me it was basically my first 3 months on the ground were living in Airbnbs, like moving around every 2 weeks, just trying to talk to customers, and really just try to make smart decisions around where we invest. I guess the really good thing about being a SaaS company is our overheads are quite low. We don't have to come and set up software on site. Everything's deployed in the cloud. But one of the elements I think of our business is, we're helping people get paid correctly and on time. And there's a big compliance element in that, particularly in Australia, and then, in every other market around the world. So that was a challenge, getting our heads around, what the UK employment law was, and obviously the same thing for the US as well. And, the funny thing, I think, in terms of the culture, I mean, the culture between Australians and British in the UK, we consider ourselves, very similar people. Australians may be slightly more lighthearted and maybe swear more than your average British person, but the culture being very similar, I think, allowed us to kind of understand the customers and understand the marketing that we would need to do a lot better. I think in the US, still when I go to the US, I seem to get some culture shock thing going on, because it just feels different. So people often say, that move from Australia to the UK is one of the easiest ones. It's a 3 times bigger market with a very similar legal understanding, very similar culture, but there's still little bits that trip you up all the time.
And you mentioned you have to decide on where to allocate your capital to be efficient. Are you talking more about from a product perspective and where to focus your time? Or are you talking about more from marketing and optimizing your marketing budget?
All of it. I mean, I think really when you're coming into a new market, you or your team, you're really the tip of the spear. So you need to be really on the ground doing sales. That's basically what's going to be driving, the revenue that allows you to pull or everything else back into the market. So that means that we're having to rely on a lot of back office functionality from our Australian team to build product for us, help us with marketing campaigns, run all that sort of stuff that we need, and we're kind of begging, cheating, and stealing all the resources we need to try to convince people to that the UK is a worthy bet and we should be putting more into it. So I think a big play for us was a lot around integrations at the very very start. We were quite lucky that there wasn't a huge amount of compliance work to do, at least immediately. It was preventing us from getting in there, and we had a lot of experience, I think, going into the US as well around adding a translation layer to our software. So a big one for us when we went into the US was people that had no idea what a roster is. Is this something that my basketball team needs? We're like, no, actually, this is what we call a schedule. So we basically couldn't sell software to anyone who wasn't running a basketball team in the US. But luckily, we didn't have as many of those issues in the UK. But little things like that still come up.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Do you remember what the time frame was from when you initially kind of stepped foot into the UK or the US, and try to build out that plan to launch and build the sales and organization there, and then what worked well and what didn't? If you can share any stories there.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the good things about being a bootstrap company is, although we don't have all the resources to do everything at once, like it seems like a lot of venture-backed companies are, it gave us, I think, a lot of freedom. And we were basically free to send me to the UK on a fairly short time frame. It was a bit of a shambles, to be honest. We had some loose plans for me to come to the UK, but a lot of those were accelerated by we had a big enterprise meeting, with a national food retailer that was basically saying, come to London, meet us, if we like your software, and we'll get started with it. And we thought that'd be an awesome opportunity, get some enterprise revenue through the door and bankroll the whole thing. And I got on the flight, went to London. The meeting never materialized. So I found myself in a basement in Shepherd's Bush in an Airbnb, thinking like, well, I better make this work now, without that. But as you can imagine, my strategy fairly quickly went to sort of an SME mid-market play. But yeah, I mean, I think we kind of accelerated a lot of things because we knew we'd try to make it work one way or another. And I think the conversations at the time were really, well, give it 6 months, and if we're not getting any traction at all, we might pull you out. But it's not too costly to have a run at it and see if we can make sales and invest off the back of that.
Interesting. So what led you to go to the UK was that enterprise lead and client that you're hoping that would pay for everything. What would you have done differently now if that happened? And this, you had a client in, I don't know, let's call it, Spain, who said, "Hey, come down and let's talk." Would you still go down and test it out?
It depends on your goals as a company, I think. I think for us, we were very aware of the fact that, we were a big fish in a small pond in Australia. We're very much, approaching a market leading position there. And of course, it's a big market, but, when it comes to these types of solutions, but we're keenly aware that, every month that we didn't pull the trigger on going to the UK and going to the US, that would be costing us down the line. And I think that did, pay off, and a lot of our intuitions around that were correct, because the competition more broadly is quite a lot weaker here than it is in Australia. But what I think I would have done is maybe thought a bit more about the business process side of it. So probably getting an accountant on the ground who can help us navigate some of the accounting and legal stuff. So I didn't have to kind of learn about that as I go along. That probably would have been a good investment in time. But I think when we have this tendency, I think, in software just to kind of think we're more or less invincible. Like, if software breaks, then we just fix it and release a new one. We just kind of think everything else is like that. Like, if you do your taxes wrong, like you fix them and you do them again. And to some extent that's right, but having some prior planning might be good as well.
Sure, yeah. So was it that the meeting didn't materialize, meaning they didn't show up, or was it because of like some accounting gap in your product that just didn't lead anywhere, or product gap?
I
Yeah.
I think maybe we probably oversold the
Mm.
lead a bit. But I
Okay.
think at the same time you've got to be bold, and I think it was the right play. I mean, it's kind of one of those things where I think what we found with our solution is when we can get in the room and we can be face to face with someone and show it to them.
Mm.
Um, they love what they see because we've kind of we're breaking from a lot of the convention with a lot of these tools. Like if you think about workforce management, you're already bored. Like it's it sounds boring. You think about the last time you signed off on a timesheet, like it just kind of gives you chills. But I think what we do is we recognize this is already this stuff is the last thing that people want to do. So we might as well make it good software and easy to
Makes
use.
sense.
And I think that's kind of really that comes across when we show it to people, and we have a lot of confidence in it.
It's good. You're quite honest with your own product, right? You're like, we're not that sexy AI and all that mix. We're boring timesheets, right?
I mean, we talk a lot about AI as well, but I think I think all software companies are kind of doing that in a bit of a tongue-in-cheek way. So
Yeah, exactly. Cool.
yeah.
So I understand, you're working with these big organizations, multiple departments, multiple employees within them. There's going to be a certain amount of difficulty and complexity in managing all these employees, especially more so now with large volume of teams moving remotely. What's some approaches you've seen or you assess with time and attendance tracking to avoid discrepancies, and then obviously dishonesty from employees? How do you guys keep track of that?
Yeah, so there's both a sort of a technological layer to it, and there's kind of an organizational layer, I suppose you could call it HR for lack of a better word. I think what I've seen time and time again is we get people coming to us and they essentially have a HR problem, in that employees might be being dishonest, or that that people are stealing from the business or whatever, and they kind of want a technological solution that will catch those people out. Quite often in the face of something like that, a technological fix is only ever a band-aid, and it's basically doomed to fail, because people like that can find ways around anything. As much as I can sit here and tell you, yeah, we track 100% of X, Y, Z, people are always going to find a way to sabotage it, or just not use it, just withhold themselves from the whole process. So, firstly, I mean, fixing anything like that and just getting to the core of that is really important. And then I'd say, yeah, like the process, introducing some technology into the process, whatever that may be, to make everything more transparent, because I think that creates a lot of friction between people when people don't know whether their timesheets are being received, or who has access to that, and just making sure everyone can get on the same page. And then I'd say this, I guess, for any business owners or anyone who's I guess interested in this stuff, is go and speak to someone who's doing your payroll, because that's kind of where all the externalities end up. So we often find these critically overworked payroll teams because people have negotiated these crazy contracts with people where there's all the stuff that's super hard to calculate, and inevitably we come in to automate all of it. But people don't really think about the downstream effects of it. Just in the same way that the accounts team always hates salespeople because they're creating, really complicated deals that are just so hard to build customers for. Payroll is quite the same. So I think working back from any issues that arrive there are important as well.
And then adding to that, how do you? We've done this before. Where, we have time tracking tools where people are, they're being monitored, and we're keeping track of their hours and their time and screenshots, all of the above. And then others where they're kind of set goals. And they're trying to trust it to deliver. How do you suggest keeping that balance when you're managing a team, where you feel you're monitoring them at all the time and micromanaging them, their day to day, versus setting that goal and then just giving them a trust to deliver? How do you keep that balance?
Yeah, so the tracking one is interesting, and we've done a bit of work on this in terms of trying to educate people. I think this tracking thing is the perfect storm for businesses for the reason we've already discussed, which is you got people working from home, so they already feel like they're separated from the company's mission. They're already kind of feeling like they're an island to themselves, or they're less able to align themselves with other people they're working with, and it breaks down trust over time. And then of course the business is feeling something the same way as well. They're saying, well, we have all these employees, we're not quite sure what they're doing. We really hope that they're doing the right thing, and they want to protect their investment, and that leads them to put in some sort of monitoring software. But of course, everyone perceives this as being spying because there was no work done up front to explain why we'd want to do it. And I think that's the biggest thing. Before you do anything with technology, any process change, anything, it's good to then realign everyone around the mission first. So to say, hey guys, one of the big concerns for the business is that, we all want to make sure that we're pulling in the same direction during COVID. It's hard for us to do that. We appreciate it's hard for you guys working from home. We want to, create a system where we can have transparency across the board and align everyone. This is what we want to do. What do you think? And sort of engage your employees around it. I think if you explain to employees why we're doing this, you might actually uncover something that means you don't need to do that in the first place. Or if you are going to do it, then it's understood by everyone. But the worst thing you can do is just unilaterally put in something like this and don't explain it. And I think there's some pretty famous examples in the UK of a few banks around the place who are having employees, suing them or basically just revolting over this stuff.
Yeah, I love that we're saying invasion of privacy and all that, right? So it's a challenge, but yeah, that's a good point, right? As long as you explain it and show. But I mean, hopefully you don't get too much pushback. But it's all business in the end, right? You're part of it, I think, and you have to either accept it or work with it, right?
Yeah, and employees will check out if they're not engaged with it. Like they'll just not use it.
Exactly.
And if there's no penalty for doing that.
Yeah. And do you enforce penalties? I don't know how you can, but yeah. So another kind of challenge I want to speak about is international or global SaaS companies, right? They're managing scheduling, or you call it rostering. They require employees to schedule different parts of the day if they're 24 hours, maybe because of the industry or the time zone difference, such as with you in Australia and then the UK. How do you suggest making that process more efficient and keeping that communication fluid among the international distributed teams?
Yeah, so I think on this, scheduling is really kind of what it comes down to is managing demand on the business. So the common one, and I think that we have in our business is, we have this follow the sun model where, like I said, we've got teams in Australia and the US and throughout Asia and the UK. And essentially what that allows us to do is essentially operate 24 hours a day, during sort of daylight hours. And the reason why we do that is because we have this demand on our business from customers all around the world to support them, to use the software, to make sure they're getting results, to maintain the product. So all of these things are sort of demands on our business, and scheduling, what it really tries to do is make sure that the business is ready for that demand or any predicted demand. And it's putting the right people in the right place at the right time, and those people are trained and all that sort of good stuff. So really what we try to do is step back and we try to work out what are the kind of demands on the business, what are the inputs, what does the demand look like? Is it stable? Is it lumpy? One of our biggest clients, Domino's Pizza, they've got this down to a science essentially, where they're trying to predict how many pizzas are being made in a 15-minute periods, and they really boiled that down, and they have a very linear business model and a very linear process around it. Which is why they can make pizzas that arrive at your door so quickly. But you don't have to go that far around it, but you do have to understand what's kind of driving your business and how you can actually put the right people in there to meet that demand.
I guess when you have, 30 minutes or it's free guarantee, the downside is, and the risk of not putting that in place is pretty high. So it's well worth it. Interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. So I want to shift gears and talk about the rebranding. So you guys have built the brand of Tanda for over 8 years, right? From 2012. What was the decision process? I don't know if you were involved in this, to rebrand the name, the domain, and the product to Workforce. I think it was in 2020.
Yeah. So I think like all things, it's kind of a mixture of a plan and a vision, and also just really good timing. I think one of the things that we were kind of quite cognizant of at the time when we had this opportunity was, Tanda literally stands for time and attendance, so T&A. And that's fine, because at the time, this is our first product we made, is around time and attendance. But we really felt that our business had evolved quite a lot past that. We were basically providing tooling across a really wide range of business problems that were not just time and attendance. So, we have a financial product in Australia as well, which was helping people with their pension and retirements. We had a range of tools, across the HR space. We're doing stuff, with machine learning and AI, and kind of talking about this rostering demand piece. And the sort of the name Tanda didn't really kind of square well, I think, with where we thought we were going. At the same time, we had this opportunity to acquire a company in the US called Human Capital Media, and they published the Workforce magazine, which is one of the longest running publications in the workforce management space. Some of their most earliest publications are basically the turn of the century, kind of early 1900s. So they have this really long pedigree of thinking about the same sort of issues that we're trying to solve with software, but they've been thinking about it from maybe a more academic perspective for a long time. So it created a really good opportunity for us to make that acquisition, and with it kind of all the expertise and the pedigree of that brand, and then also to kind of use that to rebrand our software in a way that kind of signaled our intention to the market, where we're going to be making software across this whole space. We want to be solving problems in this space for the next 100 years. If it turns out in 100 years time we're all replaced by robots, we want to be the software that helps you manage that, if that's your workforce now. So we're kind of thinking about it and trying to abstract out and just giving ourselves room to make more products for more people and solve bigger and bigger problems as they come up.
Cool. Yeah, I guess kind of the vision has changed, the product has changed. Where you guys see the business has changed from 8 years ago. So you want to encapsulate that in a different name and brand. What have you had any issues or anything you can share that you've seen since making those changes, and how or what would you suggest to other founders who are maybe considering that thought of maybe rebranding their business?
I think there's a whole literature of stuff out there about how hard it is to rebrand a company, and keep in mind. So we haven't just done a rebranding; we've also done an acquisition and essentially a merger at the same time. So doing those two things are very difficult side by side. I would say there's a couple of things on that. So one, obviously, with a SaaS company, just how it works kind of technologically, people kind of, we're running a service kind of all around the world. Someone in Australia might interpret this very differently to someone in the US versus someone in the UK. We essentially had these kind of concentric circles, or sort of like a Venn diagram, where people in the US really know Workforce, didn't really know Tanda. People in Australia really know Tanda, don't really know Workforce. People in the UK kind of didn't really know either of them, at the time. So, the UK has really kind of been the epicenter of integrating a lot of this stuff, because it's kind of the most free to do these things. But yeah, I mean, stuff comes up, kind of customers' expectations, changes all the way through the tech stack. We had to develop basically the ability to white label our solution, which we didn't have before. So basically using a translation layer to swap everything out, swap logos out, all that sort of stuff. App store listings, all the SEO, all of our integration partners. Like we integrate with, probably anywhere between 50 and 100 integration partners. So talking to all of those people, updating on their marketplaces, all of those things. And then you come to, okay, how do we integrate our team with the HCM team? What does that look like? How do we make sure we're all pulling in the right direction? There's risk factors kind of all up and down it. But I think, on the whole, the way that we've worked through it is really just try to take it challenge by challenge. It's really hard to see a lot of the stuff kind of in advance. So we've kind of always just tried to be solving what's in front of us and kind of trying to do it in a creative way. And I do think what we've come up with is quite good. I would just say to founders looking into it, this is, say, if you're just doing a rebranding, like, sometimes you don't realize how much the clients are really attached to the old brand. Like, we still have clients telling us, we'll never call you Workforce. Like, you'll always be Tanda. You'll always be Tanda to us. And I'm not sure whether to take that as a positive and that, we built a good brand, at least what we had before, a negative, and that they're not necessarily willing to change their perception of us, but we'll see.
I think you did a good job. I mean, that's typically a sign that they've actually got some emotional attachment to your brand, right? And anything else to them is foreign and they don't want to know it, even though you're the same people behind the company, right?
It's pretty strange. And I think also what that comes down to is, if you think about what we've done, is we've basically taken something that's quite easy to understand. We help you with your time and attendance, and we've kind of shifted it up a level of abstraction. We're saying we want to help you with anything that's kind of related to your workforce, specifically in these areas, but we want to have these higher level conversations with you. That is kind of harder to execute from a marketing standpoint, because
True.
It's harder for them to nail you down, which from a marketing perspective is what you want. You want people to more or less put you in a box if it's easy for you to understand what that box is. So that's just a conversation piece for us moving forward.
Mm. And that's kind of a good segue. And speaking about marketing, I'm assuming COVID has been good for you guys and probably accelerated a lot of the demand and clients for your growth. What would you say are other marketing approaches that you've seen work well for a workforce, say before COVID, and then maybe say during it in these last few months?
Yeah, I wish we could be put in the same category of Zoom and all those other companies, but counterintuitively, it's a bit different for us because we're a lot of lockdowns going on around the world, which puts the teams that we service kind of out of action. So we've taken a bit of a hit on that, but not as much as you expect if you were running a restaurant yourself. So we've more or less been able to pull through there. Yeah, sorry, mate. I might just get you to ask the question again. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought.
No problem. What were the marketing, approaches or strategies that's worked well before COVID, and then now would you say during COVID?
Yeah, definitely. So, before we had a strategy, I think in the UK that was really heavily based around getting in front of the customer, as mentioned before. So events. And a lot of demonstrations and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Some of the event halls that we've been using, a lot of them have been turned into field hospitals. The one closest to us, the Excel Centre in London, is a massive field hospital where the government is basically earmarking that space in case they want to rapidly expand the hospital system. Mm-hmm. So all of that is off, and we've had to adapt to that. Obviously, we've seen the webinar craze, webinar boom, I think. And in fact, a lot of the webinar software we were using pre-COVID was all crashing as we kind of got into it. So we've really had to adapt around that. I think, just trying to keep people engaged. Still a lot of email campaigns are working. Trying to get people on the phone is a lot harder. So trying to really ramp up our efforts around content marketing. Trying to give people stuff they can use and still kind of engage on their own time. I think that's really been the important thing for us, and also trying to pepper that with some webinars as well. But it's been it's been extremely hard, and I think a lot of these expos are still pushed out until September 2021 or even later is when they're going to run.
Yeah. So you said something interesting there. A lot of people are not are less willing to get on a call. Recently, I think we've seen that trend maybe in the last few months. I think the early stages of COVID, everybody wanted to get on the call and chat, and then something weird happened. I think it was near the end of summer, people started, kind of less wanting to, I don't know if they got Zoom fatigue or what, but curious what you guys are seeing or what's your thinking there?
It comes and goes. I mean, in the UK, we've kind of had this double dip lockdown where we went through basically a lockdown like everywhere else did in the world. And then we had this, this brilliant summer with, great weather and lots of government stimulus convincing people to get out in there. And, the summer in Europe is basically a write-off anyway because everyone's on holidays. But, coming back down into lockdown again, it's been this real cyclical thing that's been pretty hard to predict. I think the big thing for us, we are, for a lot of people, a mission critical tool, and that we help them get their staff paid. So we've really been trying to keep our customers, as close and kind of put our arms around them as much as we can. And for more than anything else, I think that really helps us on the product side. Because I think, one of my big fears at the start was that we would just take our eye off the market, and then, this work from home thing or some other thing would basically change everyone's motivations around this space, and we'd need to build sort of radically different software maybe next year, but not be aware of it yet. Luckily, that hasn't really materialized, but there's always a big risk, I think, if you're no longer talking to your customers and no longer talking to the market, you're not getting that feedback. And if it moves quickly, you can really be left behind.
Makes sense. Cool. So Bryce, who or what would you say are the best 3 resources? Well, it could be books, could be mentors, it could be people you follow. Who would you say have been the most instrumental to your success?
Yeah, so the ones I suppose I'd recommend are really just software and startup canon, really. I mean, as I mentioned, when I came into a lot of this stuff, I was not from a software background. I think a lot of people aren't, but I was more from a hardware background. So, I really ate up books like Customer Success from Salesforce and the Lean Startup and all that stuff that everyone knows. I think the things that are beneficial for me now is just to try to read more widely so I can kind of understand wider parts of the business. So I've been reading a lot about finance, particularly kind of understanding some of the dynamics that are shaping how our customers buy things and what their business models are based on. One really good book I think I would recommend is a book called Capitalism Without Capital. And what that is essentially a pretty light read from a finance perspective, but it's really good because it basically explains how our economies are changing now that everything is moving to sort of software and intangible things. So it used to be that we had factories building things, and if you wanted to open a factory, you'd buy a bunch of machinery, and then you'd hire a bunch of staff, and you put things together. But we clearly don't do those sorts of things now, and we're creating billion-dollar companies. We're hiring people and we're asking them to think about things and write code.
Right.
And it turns out that doing that creates very different economies and very different business models. Reading that book, I think, just gives you a really good insight into why we build product the way we do, why do we sell software the way we do, why do we support customers the way we do. I think that's a good one for people to kind of dig into.
Awesome. Capitalism Without Capital by Jonathan Haskell and Stein Westlake. Cool. We'll add that to the show notes. Cool. Very cool. Bryce, what does success mean to you today, whether personally, business, professionally? No right answer.
Yeah, I've been, I think for a long time, it's been pretty hard for me to untangle those two things. I mean, obviously, moving to the UK, work for a long time, and, I had a single point of focus on growing the business here, kind of, leaving my family back there and making this work. And I think now we're really coming through that tunnel of, worrying if it's going to fail every day or once a month maybe, and kind of having a wider scope on what success means, and kind of allowing myself to kind of broaden the definition of that. I think that's been really beneficial for the business as well. We can start thinking about a lot of other things like keeping the team engaged, and what does it mean for us all to be successful together, and what does that mission look like? The start of the mission is don't fail, and obviously as you go along, the mission needs to encompass what are our broader aims and where are we going, and I think that's been good for me personally to try to broaden the definition of that.
Nice. Cool. And Bryce, what are your future plans for yourself at Workforce, and where can our audience get in touch with you if they want to learn more?
Yeah, future plans really just keep growing the company here. I mean, one of the really interesting things that's been opening up for us is this sort of we now built a global company which allows us to work with enterprise clients around that 24-hour cycle, and kind of we're taking on a lot of really interesting and exciting clients in that space. And I'm just really interested to see where all the chips land with COVID. I'm suspecting there's a lot of new software we're going to have to build, but I don't quite know what it is yet. So I'm very keen to get in front of some customers who can tell me what that is, and see if we can be at the top of that list.
Cool. Yeah, I think we're all waiting to see how that plays out, right, into 2021. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time and jumping on SaaS District today. Appreciate it, Bryce.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks, Kil.
No problem. Cheers. Thank you all for listening in to this episode and joining SaaS District today. Don't forget to leave a review and subscribe for future episodes where we interview top leaders in the SaaS industry. If you're a SaaS company looking to grow and unlock the true value of your business, get in touch with us at horizoncapital.com. And myself or one of our consultants will provide a free assessment to help you get there and hit your goals. If you have any feedback or suggestions for this podcast, please DM us on Instagram or LinkedIn at Horizon Capital and help us improve our content for you all. Thanks again, and hope to see you on the next one.